Welcome to Unspoken Affairs. In today's video, I want to share with you a story that has stayed in my heart and mind, a story that changed the way I look at my own son, at family, and at the quiet ways in which kindness can shape a life. This isn't just a memory. It's a lesson wrapped in an evening I will never forget. I can still see it so clearly, as though it happened only yesterday. The evening light was melting into that golden hour glow, the kind of soft warmth that makes the world look gentler, calmer. As if even the sky is whispering that tomorrow might bring peace. I was in the living room holding a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Staring at the television screen, though, I couldn't have told you what was playing. My eyes were fixed on it, but my mind was far away, trapped inside a fog of worry that had been clinging to me for weeks. It was worry for my son, Matthew, my boy, who once filled the house with laughter, with energy, with the kind of joy that could brighten even the dullest day. He used to come bounding down the stairs 2 steps at a time, shouting about something funny his friends had said, or excitedly explaining the plot of a new video game he was dying to try. His voice used to echo through these rooms like music. But lately, that brightness was gone. There was a heaviness about him now, as though he were carrying something too heavy for his young shoulders. It reminded me of someone dragging a backpack stuffed with stones, not visible from the outside, but weighing down every step. When I asked him what was wrong, he gave me the same short replies, the same tired phrases that parents everywhere know too well. "I'm fine, Mom. It's nothing. Don't worry about it." And of course, being a mother, worrying was exactly what I did. But that evening felt different. There was something in the air, some quiet shift that told me change was coming. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, slower than usual, almost hesitant, as if every step was a decision he had to make. When he appeared in the doorway of the living room, I noticed right away how restless he looked. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his eyes darting from the floor to the wall, anywhere but my face. And then finally, his gaze landed on me, and in that instant, I felt a shiver run through me. There was a seriousness there, a weight in his eyes that told me whatever he was about to say was important. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it carried more meaning than any loud declaration ever could. My heart skipped. I had been waiting for those words for so long, silently hoping he would open up, longing for him to trust me with whatever burden he had been carrying. I nodded quickly, patting the seat on the couch beside me. But instead of sitting, he shook his head. "No, in my room. Just us, please." That was when I knew. This wasn't going to be casual. This wasn't going to be another small excuse or half answer. This was serious, more serious than I had imagined. I set down my coffee, my hands trembling slightly as I stood, and followed him up the stairs. The sound of his door closing behind us, that soft click of the latch, echoed inside my chest like a drum. He didn't just close the door of his room. He was closing us into a moment that would change us both. I sat on the edge of his bed, watching as he paced across the room, his hands fidgeting, his shoulders tense. He looked like someone searching desperately for words, but unable to find ones that felt safe enough to speak. I wanted to ease his struggle, so I spoke gently. "Matthew, whatever it is, you can tell me. You don't have to be afraid." He stopped with his back to me, and I noticed the way his shoulders trembled ever so slightly. When he finally turned, I saw his eyes red-rimmed, full of emotions he had been holding back. My chest tightened at the sight. "I've been keeping something from you, Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "and it's been eating me alive." I reached out instinctively, wanting to hold his hand. But he pulled back, not in anger, but in fear, as though contact might make the words spill out before he was ready. "You'll be mad," he whispered. I shook my head firmly. "There is nothing you could tell me that would ever make me stop loving you." Those words must have been the key he needed, because he finally sank down beside me, took a deep breath that seemed to gather every ounce of courage in him, and began, "Do you remember a few months ago when I started coming home late from school?" He asked. Of course, I remembered. A mother notices. I had clocked the shift in his routine immediately. Sometimes he had come home with excuses, group projects, extra basketball practice even when I knew the season hadn't started. I nodded slowly, watching his face carefully. Yeah, I remember. He swallowed hard, his throat moving as though the words themselves were heavy. It wasn't practice, and it wasn't schoolwork either. I was helping someone. Someone who needed me. But I couldn't tell you because I thought you'd think I was stupid. Or that I'd get in trouble. Confusion flickered through me, but also relief. Whatever this was, it didn't sound as dark as my fears had painted it. Helping who? I asked softly. That was when he told me a story that shifted everything I thought I knew about my son. He told me about Daniel, a man Matthew had first seen near the park on his walk home. Unlike the people my son usually surrounded himself with, Daniel was older, maybe in his 30s, and clearly struggling. He didn't seem to have a home. Day after day, Matthew had noticed him sitting on the same park bench, wrapped in the same worn-out jacket, staring off at nothing like the world had forgotten him. One day, Matthew said, his voice trembling, I couldn't walk past anymore. I had half a sandwich left from lunch, so I gave it to him. He looked at me like I had handed him the whole world. He told me he hadn't eaten in 2 days. Tears welled in Matthew's eyes as he explained, his voice breaking at the edges. And I couldn't just leave him there, Mom. Not after that. I had to go back. I had to do something. So day after day, Matthew had started visiting Daniel. He brought food from our kitchen, sometimes sneaking out leftovers I hadn't even realized were missing. He sat with him, listened to his stories, and even found ways to bring him clean clothes. Little things he could gather without drawing attention. I just felt like he didn't have anyone, and I wanted to be that someone, Matthew said. Tears rolling freely down his cheeks now. I sat there, stunned into silence. My son, my teenage boy, the one I thought was slipping away from me, hadn't been hiding mistakes or rebelling. He had been hiding a burden of kindness so much bigger than himself, shouldering it alone because he thought I wouldn't understand. But then his voice dropped lower, trembling even more. It's not just that, Mom. Something happened last week and I didn't know what to do. My heart tightened all over again. What happened? I asked gently. He explained how one evening when he went to find Daniel, the man wasn't at his usual bench. Panic had gripped him. He eventually found Daniel slumped in an alleyway, coughing violently, barely able to breathe. Matthew had been terrified, unsure whether he should call for help, afraid that if he didn't act, Daniel might not make it. Somehow, in that moment, he found the strength to get Daniel to a nearby shelter, where volunteers rushed to help. They told me he had pneumonia. Matthew said, his voice shaking. They asked how I knew him, and I just said he was my friend. But I didn't want you to find out this way. I didn't want you to think I was sneaking around or doing something bad. I was just trying to help. In that moment, the weight of all my misplaced fears crashed down on me. I had spent weeks worrying that my son was in trouble, that he was making bad choices, falling into the wrong crowd. The truth was so different. He hadn't been hiding mistakes. He had been hiding his compassion. I pulled him into my arms, holding him the way I had when he was little. And finally, he let himself cry into my shoulder, the way he hadn't in so long. I'm not mad, I whispered into his hair. I'm proud of you. So proud that words can't even explain it. Matthew, you have the kind of heart this world needs more of. You saw someone hurting and you didn't look away. That doesn't make me angry. That makes me love you even more. He pulled back slightly, his face wet with tears, searching my eyes. So, you're not upset I didn't tell you sooner? I smiled through my own tears. I wish you had told me because I would have wanted to help too. But I understand why you didn't. You thought you had to carry this on your own. But Matthew, you never have to carry anything alone. Not while I'm here. That evening, in the quiet of his room with the door closed, a weight lifted off both of us. He had finally told me everything, and in doing so, he changed not only how I saw him, but how I understood the quiet strength of his heart. Over the days that followed, we started visiting Daniel together. I met him at the shelter where he was recovering, and I was struck by the gentleness in his spirit. Life had dealt him such a harsh hand, lost jobs, family struggles, illness, yet he still carried hope deep inside. He told me, with tears in his own eyes, how much Matthew's kindness had meant to him. How a boy with a sandwich had given him a reason to hold on. A reason to believe he wasn't invisible. Listening to him, I felt pride swell inside me until it nearly overwhelmed me. All those weeks I had wasted on fear and suspicion melted away. My son wasn't pulling away. He wasn't lost. He was quietly becoming someone I could admire. Someone whose compassion had the power to change another person's life. And maybe, just maybe, that night when he closed his bedroom door and told me everything, he gave me more than just the truth. He gave me a gift, the gift of seeing him not just as my little boy anymore, but as a young man who could make the world better with nothing more than his heart.